Life is a series of unscripted experiences that forge us into unique individuals. These are the experiences and stories of those who possess the will, beliefs, and fortitude required to overcome obstacles, pursue their passions, and achieve success. Welcome to the HawkCast with your host, AJ Hawk.
You guys, I loved watching play forever and had the honor of playing against this guy too in 2010. I don't know if he knew it or not, but this guy, Ricky Williams, welcome to the podcast, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So everybody knows Ricky Williams, of course, and we don't have to sit here and intro you, but I would say watching you like from afar, I think a lot of people, regardless of how they feel about the path you took, they know you were a unique individual, and I think that's something that I've always had a ton of respect for. It's a theme I always talk about on here is like, it's like whatever you're going to be authentic and do your thing and don't worry about what's going on around you. And I feel like that's if anyone thinks of Ricky Williams, obviously number one, they know of you, what you've done on the field, but they know you've kind of stuck true to your beliefs and done it your own way. And was that something you think that did you have that all along, like even when you were a little kid?
I did. I did always have that. It worked throughout college. You know how it is in college. You have a strong support system, people that meet you when you're 17, 18 years old, and they kind of follow you through very, key 4 or 5 years in a young man's life. And I think when I got to the NFL and the structure and the rules, sometimes, my way and the way that they do it would rub up against each other. But I think I was lucky because of the way that I practiced, the way that I played, the way that I competed. I could get away with a lot of things.
When you say like get away with stuff, what do you mean? Because you were always known as like a guy that wasn't scared to work, and you were going to come to play, and you're a physical dude. Like what were you getting away with maybe in college that you couldn't get away with in the league?
Well, for instance, when I was in college, we had a SID who did all the media stuff, and before I would interview, we would sit and talk about what I was going to talk about, and then if I made a mistake, he would call up the writer and say what Ricky really meant to say was this, and I just think when you're mainly with the media, I think when you're in a town like Austin and everyone is a Longhorn fan, that the media has your back. And I think when I got in the NFL, it was a different scene with the media.
I know what you mean there. It's something that I went to Ohio State, and everyone that's reporting on Ohio State, it seemed like they were almost. I don't know. I've never really read clippings either way, good or bad, whatever anyone's written about myself, or even it's just something I've never really done. But it seemed like the questioning, how they would come at us in college, would be less. I don't know how to term it, but I didn't even think about it. Didn't cross my mind until I got in the NFL, and it was like, whoa! It felt like it was almost like us against them. When in college you were all together, and the media is not against you. I don't think they shouldn't want your team to do bad because they get promotions when the team wins that they're reporting on. But it almost feels like there's like some animosity there for whatever reason. And I don't know, did you feel that, I guess, when you got to New Orleans right off the bat?
I did. I mean, for me, it started quickly. I was always the kind of person with the media. I looked at them as friends almost. And when I took that attitude in New Orleans, it didn't go over well. They would ask me questions, and I'd turn it into a conversation. And I realized a little bit later that they were just looking for a soundbite.
Wow. That's funny that you say that. It's because it's true. People will tell you, don't. It's one of the first things I heard when I got to the league. They said, hey, some of these guys are going to ask for your cell phone number. Don't give your cell phone number out. You don't want them texting you and calling you in the middle of the night or whatever, even if they're going to act like they're friends with you. And I've made the mistake of doing it. I mean, not mistake. I've given my number out to some reporters over time, but I haven't been burned or anything. But, yeah, that's something that I think is funny. You would think a reporter and a guy like you, if they're asking you a question, they would love to have you sit down and have a conversation. Don't you think that would be like a dream scenario for a guy that's grown up watching you play?
I would think so, and I think nowadays media has changed since my rookie year, 15, 16 years ago. I think things have changed a lot, and with bloggers and so much coverage of athletes, I think there's a niche for everyone. But back then it was just the beat writers. covering your team. And I think, I understand their perspective. I'm a different guy, and I think I was very different from what pro writers were used to covering. And so I think I was a bit of a mystery. And sometimes when you don't know, you just give it your best shot.
Yeah, that's something that I know everyone's seen your whole, what was it after, did the Saints give up their whole, like all the rest of their picks, right, to pick you at number 5 overall?
And the first pick for the following year.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a lot to give up. And Mike Ditka was the coach, and then the whole famous like the cover of ESPN. Did they have to talk you into doing that? What did you dress up? You were the bride, right?
I was the bride. Yeah, it's goes back to what we were talking about earlier about being friends with the people in the media. And my best friend back then was Dan Lebertard, who now is a show on ESPN, and he was writing for the Miami Herald and writing for ESPN the magazine. And they said they wanted to put me on the cover for the football preview. And we bounced a lot of ideas back and forth. And after about a month and a half, they said they came up with, since he risked all the picks, that it was like a marriage. And it took a little convincing, but and honestly, I thought it would be funny, kind of like a Halloween costume. And when it came out, I was on my way to La Crosse, Wisconsin for training camp. And I landed, and there were all these media members there, and they had the magazine in their hand. And then I realized maybe I shouldn't have done that.
How'd your teammates react to that?
I think at that point my teammates had already been around me, and so they knew I was a different guy. But I got the most flack from the media, probably fans. I mean, still to this day, I always smirk when people bring up a copy of that magazine for me to sign.
I think it's cool now when you look back at it. All those things are like, over time, they all turn into things that are like, wow, I can't believe that actually happened. Like I don't know if you've seen the 30 for 30 on Brian Bosworth and his whole situation. Like I knew of him, I knew his story a little bit, but I watched that and I'm like, this dude was really doing, like all this stuff really happened. And you look back and it's so funny. But at the time, it was people who wanted to kill him. They either loved him or they hated him. And it was crazy when you look back and see the stuff that he was doing as he was playing. And I think you covered ESPN. I mean, you're right. It is. I mean, I think it is funny. Why not? And your head coach. I mean, that's a pretty big deal to get your head coach to pose a picture like that for you.
Posing a picture like that, yeah. After we did the photo shoot, we're in the limo on the way back to the facility, and he looked at me and he said, "I don't know how they got you to do that." And I said, "Coach, you should have told me that before the photo shoot, not after."
Yeah, you should have switched it around. You should have maybe taken a backup picture of him as the bride, and then they would have been like, well, we're going to test it out and see which one we want to put, who wants to be the bride and who wants to be the groom.
He's Coach Ditka. He'd have gotten away with it. I was just a rookie coming in.
You're right. They would have just laughed if it was him.
Yeah.
Yeah, people knew that. I think it goes back when you were at Texas. You remember, I mean, obviously you remember, but I remember when you would you win the Heisman and you're rushing for all those yards and, you were the number one talk of college football. You would always keep your helmet on and had to – didn't you say you had social anxiety disorder or something, or just really shy?
I was just, wearing the helmet, that all started in my rookie year in New Orleans. And we're at training camp. And at this point, it was like the third week of training camp, and we just finished our first preseason game, and I had a high ankle sprain. So I missed the whole preseason. So – they were writing the stupidest stories about like what size my socks were. And it was ridiculous. And so one day we were going over to the media and it was raining outside, so I had my helmet on. And when I sat down, before I even had a chance to take my helmet off, one of the reporters like yelled at me like, "Take your helmet off." And so I just said, "Screw you." And I left my helmet on. And then it just became like a story throughout the whole year where some interviews, not all of them, some of them I'd keep my helmet on. I've always been a little shy, but the reason I kept my helmet on was just to be rebellious to the media.
Yeah, just to, that's cool, man. I understand that. Because if you want to keep your helmet on, why should some punk media guy be able to tell you to take it off? Like, that'd be like you telling him, "Hey, tuck your shirt in, buddy."
Yeah. And the other thing about it was the way that they covered the team and the way they covered me, because my whole thing is what I enjoyed about Fame was I got a chance to be myself, and I felt the way they covered me is when I was being unique and being authentic, they called me weird or aloof and all these different things because I didn't fit the typical image of a professional football player. And so my statement was, you want me to take my helmet off, but you cover me like I'm just any other football player. So what does it matter who's underneath the helmet?
True. That makes some sense. You saying that. Does so how'd that rookie year go?
It was horrible. So I having a good game, first preseason game in Miami. Then I have this high ankle sprain, missed the whole preseason. So that sucks. First game, wear air cast, and I have a good first quarter, re-injure my ankle. First play of the second quarter. I make it to the next week. I survive the whole game. We go to San Francisco. The last play of the game, we're down by 4. Quarterback throws me the ball for some strange reason, and I'm going to get tackled, and I put my arm down to try to stay up and keep the game going, and I dislocate my elbow. So luckily we had a bye week, so I was able to play. Most people would take 6 weeks to recover from that injury, but I played in 2 weeks with a big brace on my elbow. And by the time I finally got healthy, week 10, I get a turf toe and miss 4 games. So it was just a lot of injuries, something I hadn't dealt with before, especially with the pressure and Coach Ditka. And the season ends, we go 3-13, and Ditka's fired or resigns the day after the season ends. So it was a pretty crappy season.
That's quite a difference from your last year at Texas, winning the Heisman and obviously being the man to a team like that goes 3-13 and dealing with injuries. And that's something obviously you can't really control. And even though you did and played through a dislocated elbow and all kind of a high ankle sprain, usually keeps a lot of guys out for months sometimes and nags them for. I'm sure it was still nagging you the rest of the year. But
yeah.
Who was the coach after Ditka?
It was Jim Haslett.
Okay, and when he came in, what was his attitude like?
It was worse. I mean, because you know how it is when a new coach comes in. Anyone that's really tied to the previous coach kind of has a rougher time sometimes. So my first meeting with Coach Haslett was about 2 hours of him telling me everything that everyone in the organization had told him about me, about how I was trouble and I was a prima donna and all these things. So in the same story, my second year, I finally proved to him that I'm a hard-nosed, good football player. Our team is on fire. We win 6 games in a row, and then I break my ankle on my 1,000th yard in the 10th week of the season. So again, injuries got me again.
And then you were in New Orleans one more year, right?
One more year. I had a pretty good year, but I kind of knew the writing was on the wall. They drafted Deuce McAllister out of Ole Miss in the first round. So when you're a running back and they take a running back in the first round, it's a sign that your days are probably numbered. And it was tough. It was tough to leave New Orleans. I had established myself there, and I really loved the fan base. But I got a chance to go to a great city in Miami and play for a really good team with a really good defense. And as a running back, I love good defenses on my team. Yeah.
So what year was that when you got to Miami?
2002.
So Zach Thomas was there, right?
Zach, Jason, yeah. I mean,
God. Zach's like my linebacker idol, man. That dude.
Yeah. He's a stud. I got to play against him in college too, his senior year. He was the real deal. Because he's not the fastest guy, he's not the tallest guy, but he made every play on the field.
Yeah, he does. And I got to play 2006, my rookie year. We played down at Miami, and Zach was there. And I remember after the game, I was like, we won the game, I'm pretty sure. I was like nervous. I was like, I got to say something to this dude, man. I've been watching him forever. I watch his film. I've heard the stories about how he'll watch hours and hours of film every night and whatever. And I was, as our game was going on, I was playing on defense. Then when I wasn't in, I was just watching him play against our offense. And I was like, man, this dude, it's like he knows what's happening before the quarterback knows what's happening.
I'm telling you, when we played him in college, every play, whether he made the tackle or not, he was right there. He was right there every single play. And I'm thinking to myself, how is this guy all over the field like this?
Yeah, and he's like 5'10" barely probably, and just big old jacked arms, big old jaw, and just knocking people out. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for him, but I said something to him after the game, I remember, and I was so pumped about that. I remember telling my dad, I think my dad came down to the game, I was like, hey, do you see me? I went and said something to Zach Thomas, man. I had to tell him how big of a fan I was, and he was, the coolest dude ever. So I appreciate him for being nice to me there and entertaining the young rookie for a second. But you're in Miami 3 years, right? Your third did you retire after your third year? Is that right?
After my second year, I retired. I came back for a year. Then I was suspended for a year. Came back and played 3 more seasons, and then I was free agent and went to Baltimore. And then retired after after Baltimore.
So you played 2 seasons, retired, and sat out a whole year,
Yes.
and then came back to Miami for 1 year?
And then I got suspended for a year, and then I came back for 3 more years.
Wow.
So I was there with Dave Lundstedt for 2 years. I left. I retired. Dolphins struggled. He got fired. They hired Nick Saban. I came back, played 1 year with Nick, and then I was suspended, went to Canada and played. And then when I came back, Nick took off for Alabama, and we hired Cam Cameron. Ugh. Luckily, he didn't last a year. And then
He was the head coach there?
He was a head coach for 1 year.
Yeah.
That was a year that we were like 0-14, and then we beat the Ravens in overtime to avoid the winless season.
I do remember
Cam
that.
was gone, and then they brought in Tony Sperano, and I was with him for 3 years, and then I went to Baltimore.
And those, like, when you came back to Miami for those last 3 years, I mean, you had, was it 2009? You had a monster year, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, considering that I split time for the first half of the season, and then Ronnie got hurt, and then I got a chance to play a little bit. But yeah, I had over 1,000 yards. It was a lot of fun. I averaged over 4.5 yards a carry.
And you were like 32 years old, right?
32, yep.
How did you feel? So, I want to ask you about your time off that you in between that. But how did you feel running the ball then at 32 after sitting out basically two parts of 2 different seasons, compared to like when you were say first or second year?
Yeah, it was a totally different situation. My first couple years, I was pretty much the whole offense, definitely the whole running game. And then in 2009, that's when we were doing a lot of the Wildcat stuff with Ronnie and myself. And so I was 50-50 with Ronnie. He got hurt. I got a chance to play. And I loved it, even at 32, carrying the ball 25 times a game. Unfortunately, I partially tore my pec, and so it wasn't as fun as it could have been if I would have stayed healthy. But it was fun to get back in the saddle and get to touch the ball that much again. I loved it.
Well, I know from experience with you and Ronnie in the backfield at the same time was brutal. Tough time stopping you two monsters run the ball. I know that from as a guy that had to do that. Ronnie was a big old powerful guy like yourself, man. So you guys ran hard. I have a lot of respect for running backs that run hard, and I don't think you guys ran out of bounds very often.
We didn't, and we had a lot of fun. I mean, he's probably my best friend from my playing days. We still keep in contact, and that when Coach Dan Henning brought up the Wildcat to us, I just kind of looked at him and laughed and said, I know I'm not going to be in the game when we do that. And we brought it out against New England, and it was a hit and kind of took the league by storm, and I was in 2008. Yeah.
And then everybody tried to run that for probably 2 to 3 years. Like everything in the league, it goes through its cycle, and then it kind of dies off a little bit.
Yeah. But it's amazing. These coaches keep their secrets, tight to their vest. And so other people tried to run it, but they had no idea what we were doing. I mean, we literally would spend every day, we'd spend walkthrough, half an hour running the Wildcat. So we dedicated a chunk of time and a lot of effort and energy to that package, and it paid a lot of dividends for us.
Yeah, I would think it's definitely something where you have to practice it a ton, but you also have to have the right type of guys to do it. Like a guy like Ronnie had to be very football smart, especially to run that. You can't just give that to any regular Joe and expect him to be able to do that, because there's a lot going into it, man. It's a pretty complex deal.
It was, and we had fun because we had, at the time, I think we had 4 running backs, good running backs that wanted to get on the field, and in the Wildcat, we got all 4 running backs on the field, and so our running back room was really happy with all that.
I'm sure it was, man. And so going back a little bit to after your 5th season in the league, you retired, right?
Yeah, after my 5th, yeah.
How did that come about? Like, when did you start thinking that you were going to retire?
So it came about my 4th year, my 5th year, 2003. I was coming off leading the NFL in rushing, ran for over 1,850 yards. And I was always the kind of guy where I love to build on success. And so I was coming back, hoping our team would go to the playoffs, and I'd rush for 2,000 yards. And the season was just a disaster. Our head coach was a defensive guy, so he became afraid to throw the ball. So we just ran the ball every play, which wasn't very much fun. So coming back, we didn't pick up a quarterback, and I was in the contract negotiation, looking to sign a long-term deal to finish my career in Miami. That didn't go well. Offensive coordinator Norv Turner, great offensive mind, got the head coaching job in Oakland, and then the Miami Dolphins, our staff, were fighting over who was going to be the offensive coordinator and what plays they were going to run. So there was a lot of things coming up, and I could see the writing on the wall that I wouldn't make it through the season. And I just got to the point where I was like, you know what, I got to do something. And I had gone to Australia for 2 months in the off season and just had a blast. And so and then I went to Europe. I used to date Lenny Kravitz's personal assistant, and they were on tour in Europe, and I went out there in that month and a half we have off before training camp. And I just think I realized, you know, there are other things in my life that I wanted to do, and I dedicated everything to football. So when I left, I didn't think I was going to come back. But when I was away, I kind of got a sense of who I was outside of football, and I gained some perspective. And so I realized, you know, if I want to move forward in my life, I got to come back and finish my career on the right note, and then get into other things I was interested in.
So what other things, or where did you go in the world during that whole, you know, the fall and, you know, when you normally would be playing football?
Yeah, it's interesting you ask, because I'm actually working on a book right now about that year off. Because it was fascinating, because, you know, my whole life up until that point, I had basically been a football player. And I remember the moment when I called the commissioner to retire. I literally saw my whole life flash before me, and I was wondering, like, what the heck am I going to do? So I moved out to Southern California with a good friend of mine in Huntington Beach, and I hung out on the beach for about a month. And then a friend of mine said she was going to Samoa. So I said, you know what, I'll go. So I went to Samoa, and then from there I went back to Australia. Ended up staying in Australia for 3 months, just reading. I just started reading out of the blue. Never read ever. And I just started reading books. Started reading like comparative religion, philosophy, just getting into different kinds of things. Came back to California, realized the funny story. I was in Australia, and I found this beautiful piece of land that I wanted to purchase. But in order to buy it, you had to be a citizen. So I went to apply for citizenship, and on the application, they asked, like, what skills do you have? And so I'm going down this list, and there's probably like 300 jobs. And I get down to the bottom of the list, and football player wasn't on the list. And so I realized I got to get a skill. I got to learn how to do something. So I moved back to California, and I went back to school, and I was studying alternative medicine. Ended up finding a yoga teacher, moving to India for 6 months, studying yoga there before I came back to play football. And so I did a lot of different things, and I was very active, a lot of reading, a lot of studying, a lot of learning, a lot of healing in that year off, physically and mentally.
Were you like aware? Did you pay attention at all to the NFL and football at all?
Yeah, I didn't. But what got me back to the States was I was in Thailand on my way to India, and I was literally on my way to the airport to go to India, and I sat down in the lobby of the hotel waiting for the cab to come, and some guy puts on the television, and there's an NFL football game on. It's the Raiders we're playing against Tampa on, I think it was Monday night. I watched that game. I got on the phone, called my girlfriend, said, get me on the next flight back home. And I came home because I missed it.
Wow. So that was really the first part of football you saw there in that whole time off?
That whole time off, yeah.
And it brought you, were you making a conscious effort to stay away from like seeing football when you were?
It was pretty easy because I was out of the country, and especially back then, the NFL wasn't covered very much in Australia, and I was staying in hostels where there weren't even televisions or in tents and campgrounds. So I was making a conscious effort to pretty much get away from everything, literally everything. And when I started that one morning, it caught me, and I was back home the next day.
Was that like in July?
It was Monday night.
Monday night. Never mind. I mean, you came back and you announced your reinstatement. Like, wasn't it in July you signed with? Who did you sign back with? The Dolphins, right?
The Dolphins. Well, yeah. Technically, I had to wait till July, but once Nick got the job, he called me up and we had a conversation. He said he wanted me back, and the same thing happened again. I was actually in India for the draft, and I was excited about going back to the Dolphins, and then with the number 2 overall pick, the Dolphins take Ronnie Brown, running back. So, but it worked out because I think splitting time with Ronnie really prolonged my career. And again, he's one of my best friends, so I'm glad that they did draft him.
Now, how was that year with Saban? I was just talking with someone on here. A guy, Matt Walsh, an actor I had on, we were talking about how college coaches have a hard time making the transition to NFL.
Yeah.
And I remember the whole thing that made Saban, the one thing that makes it famous was when he made one of the O or D linemen cry during practice, I think.
Yep. It was during training camp. It was a rookie. You know, he's the kind of guy. If you're a football guy, you'll love him. But if you're not committed to being the best football player you can be, you'll hate him because he's going to push you to be better every day. And I think he has his way of doing things. I mean, he's got this gift for getting you to do things that you don't want to do. I was suspended the first 4 games of that year, and he wanted me to watch practice and then go out for an hour and a half and have my own practice, like literally with one of the trainers was the quarterback, and they would set up like a blaster and all these cones, and I would run through the whole script. And at first I was thinking, there's no way I'm going to do that. He called me in his office and he asked me, and I said, all right, coach.
So yeah, that's a funny, for him to call you and tell you he wants you back is something. I mean, that's a big deal because a guy like Saban is the absolute like tip of the spear when it comes to coaches and but also like the no nonsense, like he's not messing around guy. And for him to want a guy to actually call you and reach out, it's pretty cool. I think it goes to, he must have seen, and I'm sure he'd seen something watching you play over the years for sure.
Yeah, and we had a great relationship. I think he appreciated the way that I practiced and the way that I played. And a similar story is when I came back in 2007, when Cam was there, and the Dolphins hired Bill Parcells to come in and run the team. And the first day he walked in, he had this huge book, and he like dropped it on the table, and he started going through his spiel about how if you guys are hurt, you're not going to be here next year. If you guys are trouble, you're not going to be here next year. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I'm not going to be here next year. So after the meeting, he calls me up to his office, and his first thing he says is, I want you on this team. He said, I've called around, and everyone I've talked to said you're a heck of a football player. And again, my relationship with Nick, my relationship with Bill, great relationships, and I think they really helped make my whole experience in the NFL a positive experience.
At that point, was your experience in the NFL, did it have a negative feel to it?
I did. The great things I did on the field were fun, but as far as the football environment, I think I was a little bit jaded. The way things went down in Miami, and I felt like I didn't fit. But when Nick and Bill both came in and they really showed faith in my ability and appreciation for the way I handled myself, I'd run through a wall for coaches like that.
So what year was it where you came back and were suspended the first 4 games?
That was 2005. That was Nick's first year.
Okay, and so that was coming off. Was that coming out of your retirement?
It's coming out of my retirement.
Okay, so you came out of retirement with a 4-game suspension?
Yeah.
What was that for?
So the way the NFL drug program works is I was in the NFL drug program. And so the first time you fail a test, you get put in the program. The second time you get fined like a fourth of your salary, and the third time you get suspended. But if you retire, it's and you're in the program, it's counted as a failed test. So because I retired, they had to suspend me for 4 games when I came back.
Oh, okay. So, wow. So it's like missing a test completely.
It's like missing a test if you retire, yeah.
Oh, I got you. So you were already in the program, yeah, because that's what people don't know. It's weird and complicated how it works, but yeah, for street drugs, it's different for steroids and everything. They test up for that all year round. They get you at any minute and come to your house and all that. But for street drugs, there's usually an allotted time, like a different couple months that they can come test you. But if you fail a test or you get a DUI or anything, you can get put in the program. Yeah, and once you're in the program, your first positive test just puts you in the program, right?
Yeah, and then second one, you get fined a quarter of your salary, and the third time you get suspended.
Oh, I got you. And so you were coming back with a 4-game suspension then in 2006 season or 5?
Yeah, in 2005, yeah.
Okay, all right. And so you came back after that. That had to be weird coming off of a retirement and then knowing that you had to sit out for all 4 games. Like, how was training camp that year?
It was cool because I got to play in training camp, and Ronnie held out, and so I was the main running back for the first 2.5 games, basically the first 3 games of training camp. And so I took first reps pretty much most of training camp. And then I had to sit out, and it was hard. It was hard coming back, getting the speed and the timing of the game. It took me about 2.5, 3 games. But it's hard to be away from the game for a year. Because I mean, when I was away, I didn't run, I didn't lift, I didn't do anything. And then to come back, it was tough. But once I got in the groove of things, my body felt so much better. I felt pretty good.
Did you learn over that time off? Did you learn better ways, obviously, to take care of yourself? Was that when you were teaching yoga over there?
I was teaching yoga, yeah. And I think that was the biggest gift that I got in my time off. Is I learned that I could take care of myself, and I learned some ways to take care of myself. And so when I came back, staying on top of my recovery so that I was fresh, and I became a vegetarian. Just did a lot of things different, and I felt like I was almost a different person. There's something about football where like your adrenaline kicks in and then you're just there. And what I found after a year off and doing so much yoga and meditation and all that stuff, when I came back, that natural adrenaline didn't kick in. My like energy more came from my focus. It wasn't like that animal switch where you just go crazy. I had to like build up my concentration to get there, which was different. But it was easier to calm down after the game.
And you could, it probably was a lot more manageable, and you could stay in that zone longer, I would imagine, too.
Definitely could. Yeah, and once you got there, you were there for the whole game.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love to hear when guys like, everyone talks about whatever being like the flow state or in the zone and all that. And I'm not claiming that I've ever there or anything, but a lot of times in games you do, like the best games you have, I feel like just kind of happen. The game kind of it's played through you, and the game gets over, and it's happened to me where the media would ask you like, what happened on that second down play in the third quarter when it was, I'm like, I'm sorry, man, I have no idea. I need to watch the film. I honestly can't think of any specific plays at this moment.
Yeah, I've had plays where I was running the ball, and then there was like 3 seconds that went by, and I had no idea what happened, but I was on the other side of the defense after those 3 seconds. No idea how it happened, but it happened.
That's good. As running back, too, man. That's a brutal position. I grew up playing running back all through elementary, middle school, high school, and it was brutal then on you, I feel like. And I was playing as the middle school and high school kids. I can't imagine being a running back, taking a beating for as many years as you did, and being a physical running back at that. Yeah. How do you feel now? Does your body feel pretty good?
It does. I mean, there's still stuff like my neck is sore, and I love to stay active, so I play flag football at least once a week and play on 2 softball teams. And I feel it, especially when I go hard. I feel it. But you're right, running back is brutal, and that's one of the things that I didn't realize it until I retired, because I was so used to being in pain all the time. After retiring, after about 3 months, I wake up in the morning and my body felt pretty good. I was like, okay, I could get used to this.
Was that after you? So you played in Baltimore in what, 2011?
2011, yeah.
Did you know during that season or going into it that would be your last year?
I knew there was a possibility. I was at that point where I still loved the game, and I felt I could still play at least part-time. But it just got to the point where there's so many other things I wanted to do. And I love Baltimore. They're a great organization. They really take care of their players. It was tough being like a true second string guy. That was a bit of an adjustment, because the way it worked in Baltimore was I was on the sidelines until Ray got tired, and then I get to come in and not knowing like how much I was going to play or if I was going to play or when I would come in. I didn't like that very much. I would have preferred if they had at least like a short yardage or some kind of package to get me involved in the game more.
Yeah, it's always weird to sit there and go play one play and then you sit out 25 plays and then to get thrown back in there. It's really tough. I've done that, and it's not something that's fun. That's for sure. Especially when you need to get in there and get hit early and get comfortable. I feel like and stay in there. Yeah, exactly. That's how I would. But you did a TED Talk, man, and I watched it. I don't know when it was recorded or when you did it, but I had to write down one of your. I'm going to butcher it a little bit, I know, because I didn't have anything with me but I heard one of the things you said in there was great. I'm going to read it. You said, tell me if this is even close to what you said, but you said, the pain of punishment someone gives to me is nothing compared to the punishment of choosing against myself.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I do. I sure do. You got it.
You were mentioning a story, I think, how your mom was disciplining you when you were a young kid, maybe, where they tied you down and something.
Yeah, mom tied me down to the bed. Yeah.
And so you said at that moment, and then you said that where the pain of punishment that someone gives you is nothing compared to the pain if you choosing against yourself. Like, what did you mean exactly by that?
Well, what I meant, what I was talking about specifically, and you touched on in the beginning of the show, was about being true to yourself. And I think, the way society is fashioned, we're socialized to kind of fit in and not make waves. But I think many times in your life, like, who you are comes into conflict with the way things are. And I think so many people like stop being themselves in order to conform or fit in. And just for me, whenever I did that, I literally couldn't sleep at night. But like a spanking or a suspension or a fine, I can deal with those things. But not being true to myself, I couldn't.
Do you have any? Can you think of any examples when you weren't true to yourself?
Well, yeah. I can think of a really good example. We were playing. It was when I came back in 2007. I came back week 10. Week 11. We were playing in Pittsburgh, and I'd been out of football for about a year. Had 1 week of practice, and we went to Pittsburgh on Monday night, and it was like literally there's 3.5 inches of water sitting on the field, and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way I should play in this game. These guys have been, playing for 3.5 months now, and I didn't have the balls to tell Cam I wasn't going to play. So first play of the second quarter, I tear my pec, and missed the rest of the season.
And that was your first game back?
That was my first game back, yeah.
And why you said that was week 10? Why'd you come back so late? Was that when you were coming out of the CFL?
Yeah. So after the CFL, so I was during my year suspension. I went to the CFL, and then when you're suspended for a year and you come back, you have to go meet with their doctors, and they have to clear you to say that you can go back. And I didn't get cleared to come back until that November. And so once I was cleared, I moved back to Miami. Started playing. It was right before Thanksgiving.
So you went to at the time? I have a hard time keeping a timeline in my head of your whole situation.
It's crazy. I have trouble, and I lived it. So.
Yeah, exactly. But so you were suspended a full season in 2006. 2006.
Yeah.
Was that because of a third positive test or something?
It was, yeah. So at the end, it's a crazy situation. At the end of 2005, my first year with Nick, I failed a test in last game of the season.
And you're already in the program?
I was still in the program from before. Yeah. It's it's stupid choices and bad luck, but because the program is 2 years, and I was like a month away from being out, and I failed the test. We played the Eagles on Monday night, and if we won that game, we would make it in the playoffs. We lost, separated my shoulder. I just was pissed and went out with my friends and smoked and failed the test the next morning.
So up until then, though, if you were in the program, I'm sure you're getting tested all the time.
9 times a month, yeah.
So there had to be times when you were thinking about smoking or wanted to, and you're like, oh, well, you never know. And then that time you got popped, they tested you right after it.
Yeah. That time I got popped.
Did you? You've been a big proponent or whatever in the past. I don't know what your stance is now on it about smoking and everything. How do you feel now with states? How Colorado, Washington, it's recreational, it's legal now. Like, what's your views on that whole marijuana debate right now?
Well, it's funny. I wasn't really a proponent. It came out that I was because of Dan Le Batard. But, I was the kind of person where I would never say anything publicly about it just because it was such a polarizing topic. And so for me now that it's, legal for recreational use in a couple of states, and it seems that our country is moving in that direction, it's a little bit of redemption for me. And kind of what I'm excited about is at least now we can do some research and we can see, because you have all these people getting in trouble for it, including myself. There must be something. Some benefit we're getting from it, and I think if we can find out what's the benefit and how can we mitigate the difficulties or the problems it causes, I think it could be helpful for people.
Yeah, I don't know if you still talk about it, or do you still partake?
People ask me that question.
You don't have to answer if you want.
No, it's people ask me that question, and it's a loaded question because it's like, if I say yes, the people freak out. If I say no, the people freak out. But the truth is, I never was a big smoker, but socially, if I'm hanging out with people and they're smoking, I will. And it's the same way now if I'm at my friend's house and we're playing 2K and he's smoking a blunt, I'm not going to be the guy that says, no, I don't do that.
They're going to say, you're Ricky Williams. What are you talking? They're going to be offended by you. They're going to be mad at you, actually.
People come up to me, like, literally, not so much anymore, but at least once or twice a month, people will just come up to me randomly at the movies and say, hey, you want to go outside? I got some in the car. You want to go outside and smoke? And like 100% of the time, people approach me in public, I say no.
That's probably a good move, man. I listened to, I don't know if you're aware of Joe Rogan. I talk about him all the time on here. And Joe smokes openly on his podcast, and like on camera, he doesn't care at all. He works for he works for UFC. They're cool with it and whatever, but he's a stand-up comedian first off, and he talks about it all the time. And he says wherever he goes, he always has people trying to get him to smoke with him. And he's like, he yells at his friends. He has different friends that come on his podcast that are comedians, and they'll like smoke with these random people that come to their shows. And he's like, "Are you guys serious? You don't know this dude? What is he bringing you? You have no idea what he laced this with. If he's trying to give you a roofie, whatever's going on, like." So that's probably a smart move by you, not to let these randoms suck you in, man.
Yeah, and then I have kids. I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, and so my 16-year-old, she doesn't care, but my 13-year-old, he's like, he's always in my stuff all the time, and then he wants to talk about smoking and marijuana, and so it's been good. It's been good to talk to him about my experience, and because it's something I think, especially as we move forward, that all teenagers are going to have to deal with, is whether to do drugs or not do drugs, whether to smoke or not to smoke.
So if they're 16 and 13, they're definitely well aware of your whole story, and they've probably seen everything on you, haven't they?
They could have. My 13-year-old doesn't care really. My 16-year-old, she's more like me. She's more interested. So, to me, they're great teaching points. One of the things that my daughter said to me just the other day was she wished she could be more like me and not be so steered by other people's opinions. And to me, as a parent, if I can set any kind of example that my kids even shoot for, I think I'm doing pretty good.
Oh, I think that's awesome. I have a 4 and a 2-year-old and a third kid on the way, and I wish that'd be awesome. I hope my 4-year-old daughter tells me sometimes she wants to be more like me. She's not in that phase yet.
You're 16 years, so
yeah, man. I think that's a great thing. Like any kind of mistake that parents, I think it's good for, as a parent, at least for myself. I'm speaking strictly. Everyone has their own parenting advice, but like I think, whatever mistakes I make, whatever I do wrong, I don't try to hide things from my kids. I think it's good, especially now with how everything is. Kids are so smart, and my 4-year-old knows how to use an iPad and like whatever. So I try to use them as a teaching tool, and let them know, hey, I'm an idiot. Dad's dumb sometimes. Dad messed up, and this is what happened. There was consequences if I did something wrong, or that guy I had on the podcast last time. I told him how I got caught on camera flicking off one of my coaches as a joke in a game. And they screenshotted it and whatever. It went all over, and I had to, whatever. And I said to the media when they asked me about it that I was like, I have a young daughter myself, and she will see this, and I'll let her know. Dad made a mistake. I apologize if any little kids saw that and got bad ideas or something. But you know what? I'm passionate about football, and sometimes jokes go over the edge and whatever. And I moved on, and my daughter, now I have a coffee cup of myself flicking off in my uniform doing it. So, hey, she sees it, man. I think it's good to use examples for kids and teach them instead of try to hide them and bury their head in the sand because they're going to find it somewhere.
Yeah. That's my thing as a parent. I just tell my kids, you know what? I'm not going to be the best dad, but I'm always going to be me, and you're always going to know where I am and where I stand on something. And I'll talk to you about anything, and I'll always tell you the truth.
That's awesome. I like to hear that, man. I'm sure you get annoyed with the whole weed talk and questions you get, because I'm sure when people have you on, that's like their number one thing. So I didn't even really want to go there.
Um, I think it's, I used to get annoyed by it, but I'm to a point now where, and I think the environment has changed so much that that's the beauty of it, that we can talk about it. I think 10, 15 years ago, we couldn't talk about it. And I think ultimately, as kids have to make decisions, the more information they have of people being real about what's going on, the more informed they'll be.
Exactly. Educate them, teach them how to make good decisions, because
Yep.
they're all going to be presented with things, and they got to figure out what's right and what's wrong, and that no matter what, there's consequences for your actions. So yeah, that's awesome, man. I think it's a cool message, and you've lived it, and you're doing well now. And are you still are you coaching right now for what's the school
Incarnate.
again?
Now, I coached at Incarnate Word for a year, and I loved it. I've always been a pretty good athlete, but I think, my understanding of the game made me appear to be a better athlete. But watching some of the kids that I coach, their athletic ability, and once they get a grasp of the game of football and how to play it, and to watch their ability level take off, it was more rewarding than playing, and I really loved it. But at the same time, I realized, if I'm ever going to be a coach, I got to be a head coach, because I'm such a control freak. So I coached for a year, and then I went back to school. So I'm scheduled to graduate in May with my bachelor's degree. So I've been a full-time student for the past year.
Are you at UT?
I'm at UT. Yep.
Oh, congrats, man. Yeah, that's awesome to go back. Is it hard? So do you actually go and physically sit in classrooms like you did when you were back in school?
Well, more so than I did when I was back.
Well, I should say, my bad. I didn't even think about it. Especially when you were playing. You got done in, what, 98? That was the prime era of you guys getting to, great college experiences. You guys ruined it for the rest of us that came after you.
We did, but after living in the real world for a while and coming back to school and having a sense of what I want to do, school is so much fun. I mean, I took 18 hours last semester in class, and it was brutal, but I loved it. I mean, after leaving the game, I felt like I still need something to work on a daily basis, something to improve at, and I found it in school. I'm actually planning to go to graduate school, so I'll probably be in school for the next 5-6 years.
Nice, man. What's your major going to be?
I'm going to study positive psychology, organizational positive psychology, actually. So it's really looking at how you can use work, or in my case, football, a team environment, to build character. To me, I grew up with a single mom, and my dad wasn't around, so always my coaches were like role models to me, and I learned how to work hard. I learned how to achieve. I learned how to do everything I wanted to do on the football field, and I think it's a great metaphor for life, and it's a great place to teach people virtues and to build on their strengths.
So when you're done, whenever you're finished with your schooling, whether that's graduate, PhD, whatever, what do you plan on using that for?
So I'm not sure if I want to go into coaching or if I just want to consult, because there's sports teams all around the world. So coaching, consulting, speaking, writing, basically a lot of what I'm doing now, just have more credentials and I can charge more money. I'll have more wisdom. I'll have more knowledge.
Write that book, man. Then you can really charge more money.
Oh yeah.
That's how it works. I know how the world works. Believe me, my dad is in sales forever, and he wrote a book called Get Real Selling, and it's actually a good little book. But I remember him telling me about it. He's like, hey, well, he goes around and gives speeches a lot, and he said, not only do they sell my book at my speeches, but I can charge more when I go because I have this book.
You have a book, yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I would. Is that something that you're passionate about? Is speaking and getting your story out and your whole message about consciousness and everything? Because when your TED Talk I watched, I was inspired, man. I thought it was great, and I was really. It's cool to see a football player, how you speak to. Like you said, you're very unique in what you're talking about. I mean, you're not going to find many football guys, especially guys that were as good as you, speaking about the mind and your consciousness and how to be present and everything. Is that something that you think you want to move forward with?
Yeah, it's something I enjoy talking about, and it's interesting. And when I played football, the thing that I loved the most about playing football was watching my teammates play beyond their ability. Just to see people step up and do more than they thought they could do. To me, it's a great feeling, and And again, I think because of the nature of football, there's very few people on this planet that can play the game. But at the same time, there's so many great lessons that everyone can benefit from. And just my experiences in the world and playing football, I think I have a lot to talk about, a lot of useful information that can help add quality to people's lives.
Yeah, you have real life stories that and struggles that everybody has. I think that's cool, and that's something that I think is great when people are public with their struggles. I had a guy in here named Jimmy Hatch, who's a Navy SEAL that got shot trying to go find Bergdahl, the guy that deserted his crew, and got shot, changed his whole life. His legs all mangled and whatever. But he talks this crazy story how he was on his porch with a gun and a knife, yelling, telling everybody, and yelling through the neighborhood he was going to kill himself. Went to like a psych hospital for 3 or 4 months, and he's come out the other side and he's doing really well. But his story is like, hey, everything's not perfect, man. It's not all champagne and roses. Like, he really struggled when he got out of the SEALs, and I tell him, like, I give him a lot of credit, man. He speaks to a lot of military places, like suicide prevention type things, because that's a big deal with veterans for sure. And so your story obviously is not crazy like that, but it's very unique, I think, in the path you took. Is that like your whole deal? Is that the phone or is that your thing?
It's my computer. I have no idea what it is. I think it's like the messages.
It came on there earlier. That's all right. It's good. That's why it's a podcast, man. This isn't.
It's real life, right?
That's right. This isn't some sit down 3-minute little chat. I don't even know where I was going with that, but I think your story, I would say, like, I'm encouraged by your story, and I think it's cool to see how open you are about it. Have you always been that way?
I have. You know, it's been a gradual process. I've always tried to be open, but when your dirty laundry gets aired for the whole country, you just get over it pretty quickly. So it's so much easier to just be myself, and as different or as crazy or as messed up as I am, people get that. It just gets it out of the way. We can cut to the chase and have a decent conversation.
People can relate to that, I think.
Yeah.
And when they can relate, that's why everyone loves watching, John Daly, the golfer. He's the people's champ, because he talks about his struggles he's had, and people can relate. And I think with none of us can relate to your athletic prowess. None of us have done what you've done, but your whole story and your thing. That's what I meant to get at. I'm sorry to come way roundabout. How you started your TED Talk. That's what it was. It was funny. What'd you say? Something. I have 6 kids with 3 different women. I got suspended twice, and like whatever. However your start was. Do you remember your start? Can you tell us?
I just, my thing was, so in these TED events, like, I didn't realize they're whole day events. So they have all the speakers just one after the other, and they scheduled me to be the 25th speaker. Ooh. And it starts at like 10 in the morning and goes to like 6 in the evening. So I'm sitting there all day, like, listening to these people, and like they set you up with a coach like 6 months before, and you already have your talk in the can 3 months out. And so I had my talk going in, then I got up there, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna start talking. And so I could tell the crowd we were in West Palm Beach, so it was like an older Jewish crowd.
Yeah, that's like a retirement community, basically.
Exactly, more conservative. And so I was like, okay, I gotta like jump out and like shock them and then get them going. And so I like started off saying, I'm retired Miami Dolphin. Everyone cheered, and got everyone cheering. And then I said I have 5 or 6 kids from 3 different women, I think, and I've been suspended twice. And then it was quiet, and I said, "Why aren't you guys clapping?"
It was awesome. I think that's like the attention getter. That's what they teach you in school when you're young. When you're writing a paper, like the first couple lines, and you grab their attention, just like a speech. And you did it. You had my attention. I was actually in my basement working out, and I was watching. I'm like, this dude is awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, I had a good time. That's when I really realized that I loved speaking. Just when you have people's attention and you can kind of take them through experiences they won't go through themselves, I think they come out more complex, interesting individual after. And I think that's the value of difficulty, and that's what I got from my struggles in playing football, is when you have to like check yourself and find something inside you didn't know you had, you're just a better person, and your life is more full after those experiences.
That's awesome. I'm gonna let you go here in a second and wrap it up, but I wanted to just come back to something that I didn't get to ask you earlier. I just popped in my head. Like, how did when you said Hazlitt sat down and told you for 2 hours what he had heard about you from other people supposedly? How did you get along with the guys in the locker room, like the direct locker room, not the execs upstairs and all these guys, but just your peers? How did you interact with them?
I always got along well with my teammates. I didn't spend a lot of time hanging out with my teammates. I've always been more of like a family guy, but I always had mutual respect for my teammates, and I think they appreciated the way that I worked. I was never really a vocal leader. I led by example, and I think they all could see that I love the game of football, and I give my all every moment I'm out there on the practice field or in the game. And that's probably what I miss the most is being around. And it's cliche and everyone says it, but unless you've been in the military or played, an intense game like football, where you have to trust the person next to you, and you bleed together and you sweat together and you work together. There's nothing like those bonds. Nothing.
Yeah, you said that. It does sound, it doesn't sound cliche. You hear a lot of guys talk about it, but it's especially hearing it from a guy like you, who you even said, like, you didn't spend a ton of time hanging out with your teammates, but that's what you still miss, is being able to lean on those guys and trust them, because it's true. Like, you got to be accountable to your guys, and that's something that I've always thought about in my head, regardless. I'm like, well, the number one thing this guy next to me needs to know that he can count on me, that I'm going to do my job and not get him killed. And then if we all, with 11 guys on each side, man, that's a lot of moving parts.
Especially on offense. Because for me, like, if
you go the wrong way, the play's over.
Someone makes a mistake and someone's in the backfield. So the game is so fast as a running back, you have to develop trust. Just trust that the hole is going to be where the coaches say it's going to be. And then if it's not, you just got to make do.
Okay, this is going to be probably my final question. It just made me think of it when you said that. So as a running back, like I said, with my very amateur running back status that I had, I always feel like, and I still do you think that as a running back, like when I see these running back coaches trying to teach these guys, are you able to teach a running back, other than just like simple blocking and how to block? Can you teach a guy to actually be a good running back? Can you take a guy that's not a very good running back and doesn't have instincts? Basically what I'm trying to say in this terrible roundabout way is running back mainly instincts, and then after that, you can pepper in a little pass blocking, pass pro, all that stuff. But do you think being a running back is purely instinct on feel, on where to make the cut, where to feel like where all the pressure's coming?
Well, it's a complicated answer. So yes and no. So I think you cannot teach instincts. Some guys just have natural vision, or they have natural
vision. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, vision. All the best running backs that I think I've ever known have unbelievable vision and instincts. That's the number one thing, I think.
Yeah, I think toughness is number one, and then two is vision. And one of the things that I learned when I got to the NFL, and it makes a huge difference, is footwork. Because when I got my footwork down in the NFL, my game took off to another level. Because, for instance, like an inside zone play, we're taught open, crossover, downhill. Well, if you get those steps right, you get the linebacker to move so that the guard can get up to him. So I've seen running backs that have great instincts and great vision, but they can't get their feet work right. So there's never a hole there. There's been some times where if you run an inside zone right, the linebacker will take himself out of it. I'm sure you've experienced this before.
Yes.
The linebacker will take himself out of it.
Sucks that you guys are so smart. That's the problem.
Yes. Or like a power play. Like we're taught A gap. And sometimes you go to the B gap, and that Mike linebacker runs over top, and if you stay true to that A gap and you can hit it, those are big plays. So it's really the little things. I think if you have instincts, you'll be a good running back. But if you can understand footwork and timing and what's going on around you, it takes you to the next level as a running back.
That makes sense, man. I like that you said toughness, number one. I don't think most running backs would give you that answer. They would say they're tough enough, maybe. But yeah, I agree with you there, man. That's a great assessment. And like you said, like that's how as linebackers we learn certain plays. Like we know the the footwork of the back. Well, this isn't a stretch. This is outside. This is inside zone compared to outside zone. If it's step crossover, if the tailback drop step, a little drop step, you could be, running power, and you always know which running backs and which teams run power. Some teams run like power outside, run a little bit wider, and some teams run it straight downhill, like you said in the A gap.
Yep. And
when that happens, if the guy you've made so successful, if the running back is committed to that and he trusts at that, like, okay, I just got to get my steps right, and this is going to open up. I'm just going to be barreling down this A gap. You're right. There's a tiny little crease, and shoom, because once you hit that power, you're gone, because there's going to be the tiniest sliver of a gap, and you hit it, you're so downhill already. We're screwed as defenders.
Arm tackles, yeah.
No one's arm tackling you. Trust me. I know I'm not. When I'm, linebackers weigh. That's another thing. Most running backs weigh as much as linebackers do now too. So.
Yeah, it's different. One thing I'd say before you let me go is one of my favorite games I've ever watched was, I think it was 2005 when Longhorns went Columbus, and Lineman's caught that corner route at the end of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, just watching your linebacking core get after Vince. It was a fun game to watch.
I didn't even that. That was my senior year, man. I played there. My buddies Anthony Schlegel and Bobby Carpenter were other linebackers. Did you play with Bobby in Miami?
I didn't. I did play with Bobby. I sure did.
Yeah, I didn't even I didn't think about that till right now. So yeah,
I sure did. Yeah.
Yeah. So, man, Vince won the Heisman that year, didn't he?
Well, he didn't win. We won the national championship, but Reggie got it.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
Reggie edged him out.
What would you rather have?
A national. Here we go.
Is that your iMessage or something?
It's my iMessage. I don't even know how to. I didn't even know it was on my phone, on my computer.
It could be a lot worse, man.
Yeah. I just wish I knew how to make it stop.
I like it.
Oh no! Come on! Stop texting me.
I think it goes like 3 or 4 times. You're good. And maybe it is that. That's sweet. Well, that might be my theme music and go end this podcast when we put it on. That's gonna be like our intro theme music, maybe.
Yeah.
What did you national championship or Heisman? What do you think is more valuable for you?
Yeah, that's a tough one. The thing about the Heisman Trophy is, like, I'll work for the rest of my life because I was a Heisman Trophy winner, but I see the way around Texas, the way the fans, the students, how they love Vince, and there's something about a national championship that the whole alumni and the whole anyone connected to the university feels a part of. I think because the Heisman Trophy is more of an individual award, so I probably would take a national championship.
Yeah, but you're right there. My good buddy who I came in with Troy Smith. He was in my recruiting class. He redshirted, so he won the Heisman the year my rookie year in the NFL. But Troy can work forever, especially in Columbus, Ohio, he won the Heisman. So he's one of the greats, and so money-wise, it's very beneficial to win the Heisman at those signings and everything.
Exactly.
And UT being the monster school it is and how diehard they are, they get back on track, especially as a team. It's only looking good for you, man.
That's the cool thing. After I retire, I realized, like, to a certain extent, if the team wins, I'm going to make more money.
You're right. You're a huge fan of Texas now. Was it Max? Is it Max Strong? Is that his name?
Coach Strong, Charlie Strong.
Charlie Strong. Max. I don't know who Max Strong is, but yeah, Coach Charlie.
He was a running back for the Browns.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Yeah. So if UT wins, Ricky wins. So that's a good thing. You'll be winning either way, though, man. I think your whole story is inspirational. I love it. I really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, to start this thing off, I was lucky enough to love watching you play, and I got to play against you, which was really cool for me and a fun experience, and also kind of weirdly, anxiously nervous, like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to tackle this dude at the same time. So I really been a big fan, man. We'll be looking for you. Real quick, where can people find you? Do you have any, Twitter, Facebook, whatever
Twitter,
you want people?
Yeah, it's Rick the Laureate. Is my Twitter handle.
I love it. That's awesome. Can you spell that for the people? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
We'll find it. Don't worry. We'll put it up. We'll put the link up.
It's LAUREATE.
Okay, yeah. Rick the Laureate. I love it, man. And then I know you have a foundation too. You want to pub that link up?
Yeah,
tell us what the link would be there.
Foundation.org. We do a lot of good work. We're doing work with kids here in Austin on the east side. Again, my message is teaching them they can go and do anything they want if they put their heart to it. And also, we have a program for retired football players to get body work for free. It's a rough game, and the body work I got helped save my body, allowed me to play 11 years, and allowed me to be able to play with my kids and keep playing flag football and softball today. So I'm a big fan.
That's great, man. You're doing good stuff. I appreciate you, how you're a positive influence, man. We need more guys that played and were as good as you, as positive guys that aren't bitter on the whole game and everything. So I love it. I think you've always tried to spread positive energy and make everyone else around you feel better. And that's what I try to teach my kids every day. And make everyone around you feel good. You'll be okay. So appreciate you, man. Thank you very much. Again, we will hopefully talk to you again in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.
We're glad you could join us for today's conversation. After you subscribe to the show, head over to thehawkcast.com or reach out to AJ directly on Twitter at @officialAJHawk to recommend future guests that will help us inspire people to keep talking. Thanks again, and we look forward to speaking with you next time on the HawkCast.